The Fenris wolf shall go with open mouth, and his upper jaw shall be against the heavens, and his lower jaw against the earth. He would gape wider yet if there were actually room, as recorded in the Prose Edda. Hello and welcome finally to the 11th episode of Exile Gaudamus. I am Gaudamus, your forever DM, and now fellow exile here today to bring you content about all things Path of Exile 2 related. Before we begin, though, I'd like to thank everyone who has reached out to me to check in and make sure that everything is okay. And I'd like to apologize for the amount of time between the last video, which premiered right before the end of the last league, and today's newest episode. As many of you know, I have a variety of health problems, and to be honest, those health problems have just been flaring up and really keeping me from being able to function the way that I would normally function, for lack of a better way of putting it. On top of that, we had a death in the family, and following the death, we had a week-long celebration of life. And on top of that, it's summertime. For any of you out there who have kids, you understand that things get crazy during the summertime because you have always are wanting to do things with your kids and make sure that they're having fun and really enjoying their summer. So if you're tuning in the first time or a returning viewer, please note that I don't plan to make this a habit, but that things simply have been out of my control for the last several weeks. So please forgive me, and while I thank you for your worry and appreciate all the kind words, I want you to know that there's actually nothing terrible. It's just happened to be a long stretch of how life got. But now that I've said that, let's get into today's video and my first content of the new league. In today's video, we will be discussing the start of the new league, the character that I have chosen to build for the league start, what I think of the new league, and the foundation of my new guild, which a friend of mine has helped me customize the Discord for recently, and is finally up and running the way that it should be. Yet, despite all the effort that he helped put into it, especially when I'm so computer stupid, I haven't been able to even fully utilize it yet due to the aforementioned problems that I've been going through recently. Though, I certainly would like to send a big shout out and thank you to my boy Evo Devs for all his hard work and for putting up with my computer stupidity. So, sit down and relax, smoke your little smoke, drink your little drink, and let's get started with today's content. Okay, so I think to start with, I'd like to discuss my league starter character and why I picked what I did. Now, many of you have been keeping up with my content, and you would know that I typically do at least one minion companion build at some point during the league. And while I will say that I would describe this league as the league where minions and companions have been enjoying power to an unprecedented level, I decided to go a different route from that, at least to start with. I will for sure be doing a new version of my Legion build, but I really decided to go a different route for the start of this league for a couple of reasons. The first is that I firmly believed, and truthfully, now that the data is out, it's seemingly been confirmed based on everything I've been able to find, that minions would be and are an exceptionally popular build this league, thanks to the Spirit Walker Ascendancy. And not only just the Spirit Walker Ascendancy, but the new Gimling Legionnaire that got massive buffs and changes with how they function. And thus, due to their power level, I knew they would be amazingly meta in the build stratosphere. And while they're really, really competitive as far as their power scaling goes and everything, this means that the price for items in the trade market that are utilized for minion builds will also be ridiculously expensive due to the high demand of said items and the lack of truly good items that, of course, can be used for the highest levels of content. The second reason was the buffs that the Chronomancer Ascendancy received, especially in the tank style of character builds. Some of you guys might remember, but I have mentioned in previous videos that whenever I can make it work, I would prefer to main tanks, and the 30% flat damage reduction that the Chronomancer now receives makes them one of the tankiest classes in the game, in my opinion. So for my league start, I was finally able to do something that I've been wanting to do since last season. In fact, I think some of you should know what it is without even realizing that you already do know. In essence, if you were to look at all of the previous videos that I've put out, I believe you'll understand the fact that while I've named every character I have built, there has been but one exception to that rule, and that character was my Oracle Wolf. While the other characters had names like Legion, Beelzebub, Ho Yi, etc., I've only ever called my Oracle Wolf, because the character that I was trying to base him off of, Fenrir, is and was an amazing character in folklore. But for the life of me, I simply could not make my Oracle Wolf similar enough thematically to be named after that legend from the Norse mythos. So throughout the entirety of the last league, I simply referred to him as my Oracle Wolf. Times have changed though, and so I'm happy to say that Fenrir, the wolf who devoured the future, has been born. So let's begin the talk of the build and why. In fact, I think the why in this instance is the more important part of how this build was chosen to be my league start, and thus where we will be really getting started on the data of this one. You see, this choice boils down to basic economics in my opinion. I'll say that I'm not by any means an economist. The secret here is to think about what most people will be playing, and based on all available data that I have found for this league, what the two most popular builds and ascendancies this league will be. So after looking over everything extensively, I decided that these two will be the most popular, the Spirit Walker Huntress and the Martial Artist Monk. This means a few things for me. First, gear for those actual classes and builds will be exceedingly expensive, at least at the start of the league, due to the popularity of the ascendancies themselves. This is basic rule of supply and demand. Second, these two builds in particular will be the most meta builds currently in the game with how amazing they are in both form and function. Third, a bunch of content creators will be focusing on these two builds in order to maximize the amount of views that are possible by catering to the masses. So while looking through all of the patch notes before the league launched, I wanted to make sure to stay away from these two options, at least for the start, so that I was not trying to compete, essentially in the trade market, with everyone else who was wanting to play them. As I said, this is basic economics as far as I'm concerned. The more the player base as a whole wants to use these as their league starts, the more expensive all of the items that are needed to pull off the builds become. Succinctly put, when everyone and their grandmother wants the same items, then those said items will become much more expensive, especially for the good quality ones. So with that in mind, as I was looking through the patch notes, I saw one thing that captured my attention and made it to where my brain simply couldn't let them go. Those changes you see were the changes made to the Chronomancer Ascendancy. I loved how they made the Manipulator of Time just so fucking tanky, and on top of the buffs I could see in their offensive output and defensive output, it suddenly dawned on me that I could finally make use of the Chronomancer Ascendancy alongside the werewolf form to create the true build for Fenrir. So let's go over the myth just a bit for anyone who doesn't know the ins and outs of the myth, as this is a rather old myth that gets mixed up quite a bit. And I really want to highlight how stupidly overpowered this wolf is and why this works out so well thematically. The first thing to know about Fenrir is that in mythology, this unbelievably large and vicious wolf is responsible for the voracious devouring of the sun, and is the herald of Ragnarok, or the mythical end of days in Norse mythology. When the gods of the Norse pantheon became afraid of him due to his immense size and power, they sought to bind him with chains. Believing in his own might, he allowed them to bind him, and then with a simple display of strength, he shattered the chains as if nothing had occurred. After that, the gods left him alone for a period, but soon enough, their fear grew even more, and they were back, but this time with a magic ribbon that they used to bind him. He allowed himself to be bound once again, thinking this would be no issue. However, this ribbon was not created from normal materials. It was created from 6 impossible things. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. Funny enough, for any fans of Alice in Wonderland out there, these are very similar to the 6 impossible things before breakfast that the White Queen mentioned in Through the Looking Glass. And while none of these things are directly corollary, their overall meaning is so similar in design that it cannot be denied. And while none of them were meant to be brought into direct correlation to one another, the message still sounds loud and true despite centuries of time that passed between them. So for instance, going down our list, the sound of a cat's footfall, the impossible secret. A cat's step is the epitome of absolute silence and stealth. This is the belief in a threat you cannot hear coming, the quiet stalker before the pounce. In Path of Exile terms, it's the quiet before the apocalypse. The beard of a woman is the defiance of nature. This represents the distortion of reality and the breaking of natural laws. Believing in it means accepting the world's rules can be completely subverted or written by a higher, darker power. The roots of a mountain, the unseen foundation. Mountains are anchored by an impossible depth. This correlates to believing in the ancient buried secrets of the world, things hidden deep beneath the surface, that hold everything together. The sinews of a bear, the phantom strength. Bears are pure brute force, but their sinews or nerves here represent a strength drawn from something invisible. It's the belief in a power that has no physical right to exist, yet holds the strongest beast in check. The breath of a fish, or life in the abyss. A fish doesn't breathe air, it extracts life from the suffocating dark and deep of the water. This correlates to believing in survival where there should be absolute death, drawing breath from the void itself. And the spittle of the bird, the binding of the sky. Birds are creatures of the open air and freedom. Their moisture is lost to the wind. To capture it is to bind the sky itself. It is to the belief that even the most fleeting, ethereal things can be weaponized into a permanent prison. So these types of corollaries show the same type of overarching theme. In Path of Exile 2, I have created a wolf in the same type of iteration that feels as if he is the bringer of the end of days with the passage of time. This thematic element was so crucial to the overall theme of this build that I simply could not actually acquiesce and make it half-assed to the point of it becoming trite or simply inaccurate enough thematically as to be borrowing the name without giving flesh to the details. It should be noted that I have only just gotten to the point of about tier 5 or 6 maps, but as usual, once I land upon around this level of power, I will soon begin the process of building out the next character and the next, so that when the season is finally coming to its end, I have created my full squad of characters, and I can see which of the characters that I have created is worthy of being finalized and built to the in-game completion goals that I've set for myself. So now that we have covered the reason why I made this build and why I wanted my league start to be this build, the next thing we need to talk about is in my thoughts of this league. Now that I've had the chance to rack up enough hours of gameplay this month that I usually would rack up in the first week before my health problems and everything else took hold of me, I'd love to tell you my thoughts. I simply love it. Now, while that may sound extremely positive to some of you, I must tell you that if you watch my older videos, you will see and hear that I have loved this game ever since the first time I played it. And I have to admit that in all honesty, the game has only gotten better. I know a lot of people were negative about the temple last season, and to be completely honest with you guys, I must say I didn't love the temple mechanic either. And so you know what I did then? I simply chose not to participate in that mechanic at all. And instead, I focused on everything else so that I could learn as much as possible and experience as much of this game as it could possibly offer. Now, you should know that if you haven't watched my older videos, and you know how much time, or would know how much time I've put into this game, I'm rapidly approaching 3,000 hours of gameplay across the leagues. If I have a couple of hours here and there to spend time in the game, not only am I happy about it, one might even say I'm ecstatic that I get to spend more time exploring Rayclast. With this new league, when I was able to play it, I made the mistake of trying to complete the Citadel first, without leveling and gearing up, and that was a huge mistake. Though I am sure a lot of you guys had builds and characters strong enough to make that happen forthwith, but as usual, for those of you who have been keeping up with my journey through Rayclast, I believe I've mentioned more than once that when it comes to my luck, you should replace the L with an F, and that will give you an idea of how my item drops and the enemy rare mods go for me. Yet, even after saying that, I am always looking forward to spending what time I can in Rayclast due to the amazing amount of build possibilities and the build diversity that can be found here. And equally, not even more importantly, the hunt for all of the hidden things that we will still know nothing about in this game. I must say, GGG is one of the most amazing game developers I've ever encountered in my 42 years on Earth. Because it seems like no matter what all the players discover, there's always more hidden throughout the world that is just waiting to be discovered afterwards. So we'll have to say that while it won't come as a shocker to anyone who has been paying attention to my videos, I love this game. And this league with the runes, the runic ward system, the new changes to the existing classes that we can actually develop and use, and the stunning new classes entirely that are already looking amazingly fun and powerful, alongside the new changes to some of the older ascendancies that were in desperate need of some love and attention, GGG has delivered. Path of Exile 2 is definitely the greatest game that I've ever played in my life. I don't find myself wishing I could play another game by comparison, and I honestly don't even look for new games that might be coming out. Instead, I'm excited to sign in every time for no other reason than to get to see my build become more and more complete. Finally, I would like to discuss that the new guild my friend helped me design, the Discord for it, and a bit more than I probably ever have. So to start with, it's called the Wind Talkers, and that is with a capital T and a capital W in their respective places. This is a play on words of the original Platoon 82, who are Navajo Indians that utilize their own unique language and the cryptic nature of said language, especially when it had no written form, to confuse and befuddle the Nazis because the Nazis had no basis for how to decipher it. This allowed our troops a substantial amount of freedom that they would not have had normally, and it was entirely due to this absolutely amazing American Indian language that they had no answer for. To me, this moniker is the perfect basis for what a full-fledged guild operation should be in this game. Whether it be bosses, lore keepers, merchants, crafters, or anything else that you can come up with in this game that might need a small group of people that are experts at their respective foci, the idea of using such a moniker fits perfectly because while we all, for the most part in this community, want to help others in the community and spread as much knowledge as we can to the group of players as a whole, I think almost everyone would agree that as competitive players, there are certain small portions of their knowledge base that should be kept as a personal secret or should be kept in-house inside their guildmates or guild and with their friends. As a chef for over 20 years, this analogy fits perfectly in my opinion because in a kitchen, especially a high-end one, that is a top-tier ranked kitchen, while you might happily tell another restaurateur or customer the basic recipe of, say, your signature gumbo, you will always keep a couple of ingredients or the amount of said ingredients a secret so that the students cannot just simply copy down and use your recipes as if they were their own. In the same line, I would assume that the crafting section of my guild, for instance, will have crafting recipes, or the lore section of my guild will have knowledge that, while we would happily share the majority with the player base, there would still be a few things that would be guild members only, as to maintain a certain level of competitiveness in regards to completion of content or finding hidden secrets within the game. Some things are meant to be kept a secret, and some things are meant to be shared. The simple truth is that evident in anything that might be considered a competitive atmosphere. The information and data in this game are not something that should be kept totally a secret, i.e., if you figured out a hidden subclass in this game, like the Abyssal Lich when it was first discovered, to me that is something that should be shared with the community as a whole. However, having said that, if you come up with a crafting recipe that is highly profitable for your guild, I do not believe that that should be something that is necessarily shared, because while the community would benefit as a whole for a brief period, until the market became flooded with the crafting item, your guild would suffer in the long run due to the exact flooding of said item as I mentioned. Currently, the Windtalkers is looking for its first group of leaders to head up specialized teams of people that enjoy, or should I say want to focus on one type of gameplay, in the hopes that over the next few months we can fill to max capacity in the hopes of becoming one of the better guilds in the game, while seeking simultaneously to be the best guild in the game in regards to the enjoyment level that its members will feel when logging in every day, and knowing that no matter what type of content you enjoy, you'll be joined by many others that appreciate that same thing. If you are interested, please click on the Discord link provided in the description so that we may all join up together and create a guild the likes of which has not been seen in the game since EverQuest. Well guys, that's just about it for today. Once again, I'd like to apologize that this video has taken me so long to produce, but hopefully the wait was worth it. I am Gadamesh, your forever DM, and fellow exile, wanting to wish you nothing but the best of luck with the game, your character building, your theory crafting, your lore collection, and your hunt for the perfect place to call your home base in Ray class. Join me next time as I unveil my next character. What might that be, you might be asking yourself? I guess you will just have to wait and join me in my next video for the surprise reveal. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope to see many potential leaders stepping up and joining the Windtalkers so that we can create something the likes of which gaming has potentially never seen before. Thank you guys as always for joining me, and have a wonderful evening. Enjoy your drink and your smoke, and hopefully I'll see you soon.